Hey students, this is Mr. Pickett for part 3 today. We're going to be talking a little bit about work, and then I'll also introduce the idea of power, but that's not going to be part of our curriculum that we're going to necessarily be assessing on. So you guys have learned a little bit about potential energy, gravitational potential energy in particular. You've also been learning about kinetic energy, which is the energy that an object possesses when it's in motion. And you know that these two things are measured in joules. So the last type of energy isn't really necessarily considered energy, but it's also measured in joules. And it's really important because they all three kind of work together a little bit. So I want you to think about Jack and Jill as they're going up the hill to fetch a pail of water. And then Jack fell down and he broke his crown. And then Jill came tumbling after. So I think that's a good way for us to think about work, potential energy, and kinetic energy. So in order to get up onto the hill, right, to actually climb their way up to the hill, Jack and Jill had to work. It wasn't like it was free for them. They had to work their way up the hill. Now, as they are working their way up the hill, I want you to think about what type of energy is getting bigger. You're right. Their potential energy gets bigger. I don't think they're getting faster. I think what's happening is their height is increasing. And so they're somehow increasing their potential for energy. Now, where does that come from? Well, it's because work is being done. And that's the focus of this lesson. I'm going to come back to Jack and Jill went up the hill, right? But I wanted to start with, Jack gets up on top of the hill with Jill, and they did work to get up there. And so now there's this gravitational potential energy that exists that didn't exist before because Jack and Jill did work. Now, eventually that gravitational potential energy turned into kinetic energy as they were falling down the hill or rolling down the hill. And where did that kinetic energy come from? Well, it came from the gravitational potential energy, and it came from the work that was being done. So that's what this concept, at least that's what we're going to be talking about here for the next couple minutes. We're going to talk about, well, what is work? All right, so let's get to here. So what is work? That's the question. Work, right, or the capacity to do work. Fairly simple. It is a force applied. So is there a force that's present and it's applied over a distance? That's mathematically, and at least in physics land, which is where you guys kind of exist at right now, that is the definition for work. It's when there's a force that's being applied over a specific distance. So I think sometimes the best way to talk about, well, what is work, is to talk about when is work not happening according to physics. So I got this apple. I'm holding it still. No work is being done. Why is no work being done? Well, when I look at the definition of work and what it represents, it means that a force is being applied. I am applying a force on this object up. However, I'm not doing that over a distance. I'm not moving the object whatsoever. So in this case, there's no work happening whatsoever. So if I change this to being F times D, right? There's your mathematical formula for work. It's a force that's being applied, and you're going to multiply it by the distance that it's actually going to be moving across. All right, fantastic. So again, if I'm sitting with a, like a barbell, right? A barbell is literally a bar, and a bell usually means that there's weights on it. If I have this above my head and I'm holding it still, you might be working hard. It might be difficult to do, but you are not doing work because I am not applying a force, and that force is existing over some distance. We're having no motion here. The distance value is 0. Now, if I do this, then I'm doing work, or I did work during that situation. I moved a distance and I applied a force in that situation. So work is measured in joules. Forces are measured in newtons. And distances are measured in meters. Pretty simple. Now, I love to talk about like the weight room in this situation because it's a great place to talk about work. And there's a lot of like coaches and systems that talk about work rate, and then and they also talk about power and power development. I don't want you to get too bogged down into that stuff. They're very easy to mislead people. They're not saying wrong things, but it doesn't mean that's going to make you a better athlete just because you're more powerful. By the way, usually more powerful athletes are better athletes, but I want you to understand what exactly they're doing and they're trying to get you to do. So as we're looking at this system, and again, I should probably back up here. Yeah, I'd like to increase the power for every one of our students within the school. It's a great thing to do, but I don't want you to see the words power thrown at you and you think there's this magical thing. It comes down to the physics idea about work and power. So if you can understand that work, which is like the ability to do something, you're applying a force over a specific distance. So if you're in the weight room and you're doing the bench press, right? And the bar is on your chest and you move that sucker up, you applied a force over a specific distance. So I could calculate your force production and I can calculate your the distance that you're covering there. Clearly, if you're a kid that is lifting, I'll try to get to the side a little bit, and you're one of these kids that lifts like this, you're really not moving a whole lot. You're not generating a lot of work. You're not doing a lot of work. You're not doing as much work as you could do if you had a large ROM or range of motion that would exist. Okay. Now, when does power come into play? Well, power is a slightly different concept, but not really. Power is the efficiency at which you do your work. So it's work over time. Or if I get rid of the word work and I say force times distance, because F times D is the same thing as work, it's how much force that you apply over a distance and how long it took you to do it. So if I got a kid that's benching and there's weight on the bar and they're driving it forward and it takes them forever, right? And then you got me that comes up there and goes, boom, right? Rips right through that. And I go, boom, 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 right? And I'm explosive and I accomplish the same task, right? I apply probably more force because I'm pushing it a lot harder over the same distance, but it's taking me like 3 less seconds. I mean, it might take that kid, like 3 seconds, and I might do that in 0.2 of a second, right? And that's it. I am accomplishing that same task in a shorter amount of time. I'm more efficient. Power is simply your ability to do work and a good amount of work in a short amount of time. So when a program says it's going to make you more powerful, well, it can. If you can accomplish the same task, but you can do it faster, then you're more powerful. And that's actually a really good thing. If you're a sprinter and you're the same size and you're able to go sprint from point A to point B, and you can keep doing it faster and faster and faster and faster, you are more powerful, right? 100%. Doing the same task in a smaller amount of time, you are more powerful. What do we measure power in? Joules per second or a watt. Okay. So wattage, watts. I don't really need to dig into that too much, but work, very simple to understand. It's a force that's being applied over a distance. You have to have the object that actually moves. Generally speaking, we talk about motion this way. Okay, motion this way, and that's work. You can work when you're moving this way. It's a little bit more difficult to calculate. All right, kids, I hope that this was beneficial for you. Have a great day.